Hello and welcome to Worldwide Classified, where we're going to be talking about the EU referendum coming up this Thursday, the 23rd of June. The aim of this video is not to convince you whether to vote Remain or leave the EU, but rather to give you both sides so that you can make an informed and educated decision. Let's say I wanted to remain in the EU. Now, one of the biggest advantages of the European Union is the single market. This is trading with no tariffs on imports or exports between the 28 countries within the EU. One set of regulations for all to follow. Setting up this single market also had ulterior motives. The idea after the war was that countries that trade together are less likely to go to war with each other. So this brings us to security. By being part of the EU, the UK has access to a wider number of criminal records, and the countries within the EU can work together on counter-terrorism. Another reason to remain in the EU is the huge uncertainty of what actually is going to happen if we leave. No one has ever left the EU. No one. Ever. So what do we do with the EU nationals currently living, working and studying in the UK? What do they do with the UK nationals currently living, working and studying in the rest of the EU? What will be our new trade relations, our new regulations and our new legislations? We just don't know. And finally, we have the question of character. Now, are we the type of country to only look at the negatives of the Union and abandon it because of the problems? Or are we going to stay loyal to the other 27 countries and work towards a solution? With this question of character, the government have already proposed a reformed EU. Now, in the February European Council, the government secured a new settlement for the UK. In this settlement, we retain our rights for a seat in the European Council and our full voting rights and vetoes. We retain our full say over the laws in the single market. We have not been required, and we still will not be required, to adopt the euro. It includes a legal confirmation that the UK's national security is the sole responsibility of the UK government. We also remain outside the Schengen border-free area, and we have included an emergency brake. It has been formally recognised for the first time that the UK is not committed to further political integration into the EU, and the concept of an ever closer union will not apply to the UK in the future. The agreement confirms that the EU member states do not have to aim for a common destination. Now, we know the EU is imperfect, just as any complex organisation is expected to be. We cannot question its very existence because of its faults, but rather strive towards an improved and reformed EU. Sorry, took a break to eat some Indian, which, by the way, is the UK's national dish. But I'm back. Now I've gone on to the other side, the Brexit campaign, where Britain needs to exit. So the first argument is that of an emotional one. As part of the EU, there is a free movement of people. Under the EU law, Britain cannot prevent anyone from another member state coming to live in the country. The result has been a large increase in immigration into Britain, particularly from Eastern and Southern Europe. This is where people are fed up. Leaving the EU would allow us to regain control of our borders. This open-door policy can cause overcrowding and may also be seen as a concern to our safekeeping. Allowing an influx of immigrants from such different backgrounds can cause apprehension. People of different religions, different cultures, and those who are used to different laws all living in harmony just isn't realistic. Integration into another society is not an easy process for anyone, and friction is inevitable with local people. In the Brexit campaign, we also hear the word sovereignty. There is no doubt that the UK is a sovereign state under international law, and that Parliament is our supreme legislative authority. However, the question is about power and influence. Leaving the EU will allow Britain to re-establish itself as a truly independent nation, building its own connections to the rest of the world. The bilateral relationships between UK and the other nations are vital and could persist regardless of membership. The EU without Britain and other nations would not want to put their own citizens or the UK's at greater risk by reducing cooperation in the event of Brexit. Decisions over international connections would then be shifted. The shared power with the EU will be restored to the British Parliament. Finally, following February's proposal for a reformed EU, it simply is not good enough. What the Prime Minister David Cameron set out to achieve and what was actually agreed upon are two different things. Two examples. One, a watered-down emergency break from 13 years to 4 years, which limits migrants to access work benefits, where only the first year is a total ban, and then the benefits gradually increase. Two, he wanted to stop all payments of child benefits going to children living outside the UK from parents working within the UK. Instead, child benefit payments will be indexed to the cost of living for the children living outside the UK. Keep calm. There you have both sides of the argument, whether to remain or leave the EU. Now it's up to you to decide.